Welcome to the Whole Enchilada, a community of high achievers that fight the status quo, rebel against mediocrity, and make life happen. Let's go. Hey, Enchilada Nation, thanks so much for joining us today. Really excited about our conversation. I have a really good friend of mine and business partner, Robert MacFarland, on the call with me this morning. Robert, how you doing?
I'm doing great today, man. It's a great day.
Good. It is a great day. Every day is a great day, right?
That is true. That is true.
At least on the days that it's not a great day, we're going to convince ourselves it is by saying it.
Yeah. If you act enthusiastic, you will be enthusiastic, right?
Yeah. It's the old as if principle. Hey, one of the things that we're going to stay focused on with our conversation today, and Robert and I actually had a couple conversations over the last week or so around this, is we wanted to get hyper focused around a conversation around charitable giving or giving back in the communities in which we serve. A lot of us in the Enchilada Nation, we are entrepreneurs. We're out serving in our community. We're hustling. We're making things happen. And I think it's really important for us, as we're so focused on growing our businesses within certain communities, that we're also focused and understand on what impact our products and services have on the community, both by the product and service we're providing, but what are we doing outside of that to really better our communities? And within the last week, within our organization, Keller Williams, we had Keller Williams Red Day. Robert, tell us a little bit about what Red Day is so the rest of our listenership knows.
So Red Day is a day that Keller Williams internationally picks one day a year. It always falls on the second Thursday of May, that the agents give back to their communities. You know, real estate agents historically have been kind of cornerstones in all aspects of the local community, right? When you sell homes there, you tend to know the people and you deal with the schools and you know the businesses and you know the city governments, and that service happens all the time. But this is a focus day where it's not about driving our businesses, it's about giving back to that same community. And we all do it, all 180,000 of us all do it on the same day. So it's a pretty awesome day that we get to share together.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty inspiring, even though, and we'll talk a little bit about what we did individually in our community here in Utah, but it's pretty inspiring to know that when you're out doing whatever it is you're doing as a service project, that there's an army of 180,000 other people out serving that same day in their communities. So a lot of our listeners know that we are based out of Utah, and interesting, Robert, you run our office down in St. George, which is on the southern border of Utah. And we had projects going all the way from the southern border of Utah all the way up to Cache County, which is on the very northern border of Utah, having an impact. But Robert, talk to us a little bit about some of your sentiments and takeaway, as that even though we showed up and served on Red Day and had a lot of our agents show up that day and give their day back, there was a lot of build up and thought process going into this. Talk to us a little bit about that from your perspective.
Yeah. And I think anytime that you put energy into something that you are passionate about or you care about, it's going to consume a lot of your thought process. It's going to consume a lot of your time, even before, during, and then after, right? I think if there's something worth doing, it's something worth doing really well. And community service shouldn't be an exception for that, right? Just being able to show up and say, hey, I'm just kind of here to do whatever you need me to do, versus taking a proactive approach. And so gearing up for the day, it's all about building the energy around what the purpose is, right? What is it that we're specifically doing to give back to the community? Why are we giving back to it? I think it's appropriate to question. I think it's appropriate to question all charities as to what it is that they're actually providing and what is it they're actually doing. And I took a minute for us. We were giving back to the Utah Food Bank, which is a organization that might have changed names a couple of times, but it has been around since the late 1800s. It's over 130 years old, here serving Utah as a food donation source. And I thought it was appropriate to find out who's in charge of it. And I interviewed the CEO, and it's enlightening to see that on the surface, we think they do one thing, and then it's very surprising when you find out what all of the things that they do, especially at that high level.
Yeah. It's interesting, Robert. You and I get to talk several times a week. In fact, a lot of times we're talking daily. And yeah. you always, no matter the topic, and normally it's around business stuff or your family or things like that, you always bring great energy to the conversation. But one thing that got me jazzed about this conversation is over the last several weeks, every time that you were talking about the Utah Food Bank or this service project or getting people rallied, I mean, you had an extra bounce and energy in your voice and in your step as we had that conversation. Why do you think that is for you?
Well, for me personally, there's something about it that get it might be something that's just naturally in me, but I think I've always been a part of a community service project ever since I was younger. I think I've always been exposed to that. It was with my parents, but then in the schooling that I went to, it was a requirement of the school that I went to growing up. And so when I think about all of the times that I've did community service, the ones I connect with most is the ones I know the most about. And I think getting that interview and talking to the CEO and going on site and meeting with the people that are doing it every day before we actually even served into it, it made me just so excited. It really did. Like they were so excited about having us help, and I'm sure they have people to help all the time, but it seemed like we were the first ones to ever come in and do this thing that they do all the time, right? And so they got excited about it, which spills over to us. And I think that's kind of a human need. And we've talked about the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yep.
And I think that rubbing of emotion of human interaction, it's what it's meant to do, right? I think it's just a natural thing. And I would be curious when someone says, when I give service back, I don't get that feeling. I'd have a zillion questions for them, right? And feel like, what's at the root of not getting that energy? Because I would be really surprised to find anybody that really doesn't get energy out of that.
Yeah, I agree. And I knowing what our community looks like for the whole enchilada, we have a lot of really high driven, smart, focused business people that we're all so focused on our personal goals that sometimes we approach life with blinders on. And every once in a while we come up and look around like, okay, what's going on with the rest of the world? Because I'm so focused on achieving my goals. And for me, over my lifetime, one of the things that's really helped me stay grounded and keep perspective is these types of service projects. So several years ago, with my team in Arizona, we started Green Group Gives and committed to a monthly service project as a team. And just that fact, one, it did a couple things. One, it helped my whole team gain perspective. Obviously, it also helped us grow notoriety in the community, which was part of the marketing piece of it. But one of the unexpected results of it is obviously we were able to help a lot of people in their time of need. But the way it drew and pulled my team together was an unexpected result that was pretty phenomenal. Did you see some of that this last week as you led your team in a service project?
Absolutely. It's always the after, it's almost like the glow, the afterglow, or like the runner's high. It's all these things that we talk about that happen after the fact. And it's the conversations that you have afterward that really kind of show and highlight those things. And it actually solidifies that event and that cultural condition, because then we all realize that there's something we have in common about that service that we all are drawn to. And that's a great place to build relationships. In my opinion, I think that's a great place to build relationships off of, is serving each other, not necessarily of what can I get from you, or what am I giving to you so that I can get something in return, right? The quid pro quo that is business, the quid pro quo with service is a great feeling inside, right? That's what we receive in the other end. And I think that's a great foundation for culture.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think back at some of my closest relationships that have stayed with me through the test of time, right? There's a lot of relationships I had that in the moment felt very important to me, but as seasons changed, those relationships became less important to me. But I think back at some of the most important relationships I have, either from someone I looked up to or someone that I was equals with, or someone that I was bringing up. And one of the things that I think is the commonality among that is if we served together, like we did something hard together outside of the norm, I think that just creates a connectivity with people that you don't expect, whether it's the person you're serving or the person you're serving with.
Yeah. That, I think that's actually brilliantly said, because when you get outside of your own comfort zone, because I think for a lot of people, giving community service is outside of their comfort zone. It's not that they don't want to do it. It's something that they just don't do very often. And when they do it, that's outside of their comfort zone, and it's almost like hammering a nail into the foundation of where you're at. You can't help but not forget it, right? And when you do it together with people, then that's going to solidify that relationship as well, because it's whether it's hard or whether it's something you've never done, right? Easy or not, because hopefully those service pieces are easy. Hopefully they are. But I know one of our offices went and basically remodeled the house, and I'm sure that nobody there was thinking that was easy, right? I'm sure no one that day was like, hey, that was just a cakewalk, right? And so I think just pushing and stretching that rubber band out of your comfort zone really does the same thing. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it compounds. I've read several articles and had several life stories with people that I've coached over time that made a comment along these lines. And this comment comes in several shapes and sizes, but in essence, it always comes back to the same thing of, hey, someday when I'm a millionaire, someday when I'm retired, I'm going to give my time and my money to all these charitable organizations. And I think historically, people have been saying that a long time, but I think historically it's been proven to show that those people, when and if they become rich or wealthy, that they're so guarded with that money that they're really not going to give more than as a percentage of their income than they were giving at an earlier point in their career. I would argue that this charitable service is a muscle within us that's got to be exercised throughout our life, so that as we become more influential in our communities, we have deeper pocketbooks over time, that we can have a bigger impact in our communities. But there's no better time to start exercising that muscle than the present.
Yeah, and I think you look at whenever I ask, because we talk about goals all of the time, right? We know that in business, it's all about mindset and knowing where you're headed and building a roadmap to it, right? And that's creating habits, right? We talk about taking inventory of the six things: models and systems and habits and skills, and all those, that big inventory of items that we take in our unique set of that. And when it comes to the model of giving, you have to have a model around and a system around how you're going to fulfill yourself in that. And I ask, especially people first getting into real estate that might not already have a really good grip on their finances, or they have their first milestones making $100,000. It's always about they want the money so they can have time for them, right? It's always talking about, when I have time, it'll be time for me. And that's the muscle that they lift. That's the muscle that they really start to grow. And I know it's important that you got to focus on all the muscle groups. I don't work out, right? I don't really do that, but I know it's important. I definitely know it's important.
Yeah. And I think it's healthy for us to understand that. And I think entrepreneurship, there's a lot of, and for a lack of a better term, there's a lot of selfish conversation in entrepreneurship, right? I am going to build this business. I'm going to make this amount of money. I'm going to do these things with that money. I'm going to buy this, right? And I don't necessarily, and again, I'm not, maybe you can tell me a better word than selfish, because I don't think that's a selfish action, but it's very focused on in impacting your world, where leadership and stepping outside of that entrepreneurship of pushing yourself forward is, how am I bringing other people along with me, whether that's people within my organization or people within my community that maybe I'm not financially obligated to, like I am with my employees, but I'm ethically and morally obligated to lift in the community which I serve.
Yeah. And I think there's some selfishness, and we talk about being overall, the whole enchilada is about being a well-rounded individual, right? And
Correct.
It is as an individual. And we know, and I'm going to go back to that hierarchy of needs, is we know that it's a building process. There's certain things that we need to build on, and psychologically is that standard baseline. And as we go up, I think as I look at the triangle, as I look at the pyramid, service and charitable giving, whether that's giving somebody to the needy or just giving something to somebody that needs something, right? Not that they're needy, but that you can see that there's a need that they have. you're doing awesome, and I could see that you're growing, right? Having just a simple conversation with somebody about that they might not outwardly say, I need this, but you can see that just by lifting them up in a different way, that's going to feed us somewhere in that pyramid, in every single section of it. That charitable giving and that service oriented person is going to fulfill those needs all the way up the chain.
No, I think you make a couple really important points there. One is that as we're talking about charitable giving, like that can be classified or defined on a huge scale of a big giving of I'm going to Africa and building schools for children, to I gave someone a compliment today that seemed down and out. Like I would argue that both of those could be defined as some element of giving back and lifting somebody else and helping them, but they're completely different scales and take a different economic support system to make those happen. But both of them are charitable giving. And then going back to that hierarchy of needs we keep referencing, and Robert, I know you have a couple young kids at home. I've got four daughters in my house. And if you look at that hierarchy of needs, one of the things that I know to be true is the base of the hierarchy of needs is all about safety. And the next one up is about shelter, food, and water. Well, my kids have never had to wonder, are we going to get a meal today? My kids have never had to wonder, like, where are we sleeping today? And so one of the things that I appreciate about getting my kids involved in some of these charitable efforts is they don't have to personally experience those. I'm thrilled that they're not personally experiencing those hardships, but it is important for them to gain perspective on life, to understand those hardships exist. Mm-hmm. They might not exist for them, but they exist in the world. And sometimes setting up these charitable opportunities helps them gain perspective, which may shape how they approach other pieces in their own hierarchical piece of needs. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's great, because even looking at myself, right, we talk a lot about what we think and how we are, and I look down and I never had any of those needs either, right? I never had any of those worries either. And so until you walk through the streets of a third world country, you might not realize that that's a thing that isn't just something that's on television, right? And it's a big scale. It's a big scale of service, right? And I think the best leaders are the ones that give service, and they have to have a perspective on all the different ways that they can give service. And like you said, some of us don't have that perspective. We're given a big blessing and not needing to be worried about some of those things, and that's not true. And you might walk past somebody in the United States of America, in small town St. George, where economically it looks really good. There's not really a bad part of town. We don't have a lot of crime, and there's people that are suffering that sometimes they don't have food, right? The Utah Food Bank is what we served, and they give a lot of food away because 1 in 4 have food insecurities in the state of Utah. And that was surprising to me, right? You just don't know what you don't know. Putting yourself in those situations to learn is obviously enlightening.
I think so too. So let's shift our conversation here, and as with all of our conversations in the whole enchilada, is we're going to shift into some actionable items. And as Robert and I kind of talked this through, we're really talking to ourselves here of how do we get better at this, because we're on a journey together with our whole community here. So this is in no way of us telling people what to go do, but I want to open the conversation, Robert, with you of us approaching this from our perspective, which I think our listenership will lean into. But if we were going to give ourselves and our listeners some advice on how to approach charitable giving more purposefully, where would we start that conversation?
I know we started this. I truthfully, I told Marcus right before we started, I was like, I'm not actually sure what I could give anybody listening to the podcast on this. I just know that I love it, and I know I need more of it. And for me and for my business, saying that if the people around me, I want to attract people around me that also want to make service a big part of the foundation of their business. Simon Sinek in the book Start With Why, he talks about the golden circle and saying it's not necessarily what you're doing it or how you're doing it, it's why you're doing it. And so getting clarity for me about why do I want to give service and what is impactful to me? I have a son that has type 1 diabetes, right? And so there's a community of people in there that I know that I can connect with on the struggles that we've had. Not that it's compared to lots of other disabilities that are out there, but finding things out in the world that really mean something to me has been the best driver for going forward, and then attracting people around me that also want that, because they're going to teach me on how to serve as well by surrounding myself. There's an agent in my office, and he's probably one of my best friends in the whole world, Jesse Paul, and he taught me that from the day I got into real estate. He's always been a giver, and I want those relationships in my life because I'm learning from him as a guy that's as selfless as they come. I can see that, and I want to emulate that. So I think one of the first action items is if you don't have people in your life that are modeling that service and that gratitude, find those people first. Because if you can't get clarity around it, find somebody that does have clarity and draw closer to them.
No, I think that's brilliantly said. I mean, going back to the Simon Sinek pieces is I think our energy can remain high and excited about charitable giving if it's in alignment with our personal mission and vision, right? If we don't have clarity on who we are and what we're excited about, chances are, if even if I got clarity on that, but if someone invites me, there's a million different charitable organizations out there. There's some of them that I'm going to get more excited about giving my time and energy to than others. Because the ones that are in alignment with what I'm passionate about, I'm probably going to be more purposeful and passionate about giving to. And then to your point with Jesse, who, you're right, he is an incredible human being, is if I'm spending all my time with takers, guess what I'm going to slowly morph into? A taker. If I spend more of my time and energy around people that are givers, that want to give, I'm going to enhance or double down on my giving efforts and grow in that area.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great point. So I would agree with you that step one here is to get clarity on do you have clarity on your personal mission vision, and what charitable organizations are in alignment with that personal mission and vision, so that you're moving 2 stones forward with less energy than pushing 2 stones opposite direction. What would you say would be the next step to do once you identify that?
I will go back to bring people into the who, the people into your world that also will want to contribute to those things and feed into that, because surrounding yourself with a support network of people, or seeking out, if you don't already know who, seeking out people that are already in those causes or already contributing to things, and asking them questions, finding out how they energize themselves around this. And it's going to fit, you'll find, I have found that I'm fitting it into my business is going around that service versus I'm fitting my service into my business and into my life. My life and my business is being surrounded around that service.
Agreed. One of the things that I really appreciate around you is you constantly say to me, whether it's in a message or if I call you and I'm eating into your time, is I'm a master of my schedule, right? That's one thing that you're working on a significant way, is mastering your schedule. And I think a lot of people would resonate with us on that. Like if I pulled up my calendar 3 weeks from now, it's probably pretty close to full already. We're just very busy. We're very purposeful in how we use our time. And what becomes hard for us is if I showed up to you, Robert, tomorrow and said, hey, by the way, on Tuesday, I want you to come do a charitable giving project with me, or I want you to be on this call to learn more about this charity, is you may want to do it mentally, but your calendar is already committed to your personal goals. So one of the things that I would recommend too, as we identify what is our personal mission, vision, and passion, how do we overlap that with a charitable cause that we can also equally be excited about, that's in alignment with our personal vision? It's then making a pre-decision in what portion of my calendar is going to be dedicated to this, and I'm going to pre-decide it so that I don't overlap it in the moment that I have to make a choice. Am I going to go help somebody else, or am I going to commit to growing my business forward? It doesn't have to be one or the other, but if we have to be a little bit more purposeful in dedicating a portion of our calendar to that effort. Any thoughts on that?
You've done the business planning clinics for us for the last couple of years, and one of the things that I always hear you say is that at the beginning of the year, I look at my calendar and I plan out all my family vacations, right? I look at it and I say, my family is is a primary source of the joy that you have and what you want your business to feed, and you're like, family comes first, that I don't have a single hour of work planned until I have my vacations and my family time planned, and then I overlap that with these things. So this is where are you going to fit that service into it and overlap that on your calendar. And I fight this, and why I say it all the time is I'm a master of my schedule, is the fact that if it's not on my calendar, it's not going to exist, because you're going to either plan your day or your day's going to be planned for you. One way or another, somebody's in control of it. Do you want to be in control of it, or you want somebody else to, or the world to be in control of it? And so really, really being purposeful around it isn't contrived, because it's easy to say that, well, I mean, I have to do this because it's on my calendar. It's not that way. It should come out of a feeling of, I know how important this is, and I'm not going to lose the opportunity to make it a part of my weekly, monthly, yearly habits.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one of the things that doing this at a higher level does as well is it protects you from getting involved with projects or being guilted into getting involved with projects that you're not passionate about. Like, the truth is, the bigger your world gets, the more people approach you of, hey, will you buy Girl Scout cookies for my kid? Hey, will you donate and sponsor my kid's baseball team? Hey, will you come do this project or that project? Like, the opportunities are endless. But one of the things that I think, by being more purposeful and direct, it then protects you against getting involved with projects that maybe aren't your priority, by saying, hey, I love that you're focused on that charity. My charity of choice that I'm focused on for the next quarter is XYZ, and all my charitable efforts are going towards this over the next quarter. And so it's a nice way of me not being guilted into saying, like, oh, I guess I should give to this one because no one else has approached me, but I'm not purposeful and passionate about it. But I'm not saying no to that person either. I'm saying, hey, we're still teammates. We're both being charitable. My charitable efforts and energies are just going this direction, and yours are going that direction, and both of them are important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody comes to me for money because they know I'm poor. So I'm just kidding. Or just pretend that you don't make a lot of money and people don't come to you for money, I guess.
Yeah, right. So let's, was there anything else that you really wanted to hit home in our conversation around charitable giving before we start to wrap it up?
No, I think there's a lot of conversations that we can have around service and gratitude and giving out as much as we're offering in. And I don't think people need to be, it's not a new lesson, right? Nobody's listening to this podcast being like, you know what? I never thought of that, right? This whole conversation is like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Everybody knows this thing makes sense. And the more we talk about it though, and the more that this is cathartic for you and me, right? Is that we're solidifying that we're in a business relationship together, and it's as important to me as it is you. And I think that in itself is strong enough to where if nobody listened to this, I think we still landed on something good.
Yeah, I think so. And the last piece of this that is, as you know, I love talking about investing. I love my investments going out and compounding, right? Growing beyond my initial effort and putting the deal together. And I would argue, as a wrap up to this conversation, that if you are more purposeful around your charitable giving, it will pay you back in dividends, and it will grow beyond your view. You might go out and serve somebody that may be in need today, that they'll remember down the road when they're no longer in need, but they want to pay it forward. And you may not see the result of that paying it forward, but that person will remember it. And it may have been the fuel that caused them to become a giver instead of a taker down the road when they find themselves in that position. So I would argue that there a lot of the result, even though we can show up and do a service project and see the immediate result, I would say that the bigger result is probably outside of our view, but we should take that approach into every charitable opportunity. Is my impact is beyond today if I do it right and being more purposeful with it. A quote I read in regards to giving, the great Winston Churchill said, "We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give." And as you know, the whole enchilada is about building that big life. And we'd be ignorant to think that it's all about gaining and how we spend our money and our time that creates that life by design. But it's also how we give back in our community and who we're serving with either our energy or our resources. So I just want to thank everyone for plugging in. I would encourage you to take a few minutes and think through what is your personal mission vision? What are those passion projects that you could overlap your personal mission vision with to grow your charitable efforts and align with those companies and those efforts? And let's go out and make a bigger impact in the world. And don't forget, my friends, go live life on your terms. Thanks so much. Have a good day. Thanks, Robert.